Thank you all so much. I will now pass us over to Jillian Godsil, journalist and broadcaster, our moderator for this evening.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you to the two principals, to Alan Cox and Mary O'Doherty. It's an amazing event tonight. And a big, big thank you to both Morgan Ryan and John McGuinness, because the amount of work that went into creating this is massive. And also I really want to thank and commend the students. It's a great inspiration to see kids so enthused and energetic about politics. A little birdie told me that you use lots of social media to make sure we had some amazing guests here today. So well done. And I want to say to you guys, sometimes people patronize young people and they say, oh, whatever. You're not the citizens of tomorrow. You're not the citizens of the future. You're the citizens of now. You're the citizens of today, and your vote counts. And I thank you very much for being here and being present and having some very good questions for our panel. So you heard the running order. We're quite tight on time. We've started a bit late, so I don't keep anyone here till the wee hours. What I want to do is, out of respect for the students, because they put this really amazing panel together, is to ask everybody on the panel to be very respectful, not to talk over people, and to be more Twitter than Facebook. Really, really, really keep it very tight. And I do have a mandate from the students. I've been told that if anyone waffles on, I'm allowed to cut you off. So I'm warning you, we don't. Because my job is to give equal balance. And that's what I'm trying to do, give equal balance to everybody here tonight. So that's enough about me. We're going to start off with some questions, and the students have submitted them. And I'm going to ask, first of all, if I can get Leah Elliott. Is Leah Elliott here? Oh, brilliant. Could you have a mic?
We might have the 2-minute introductions first.
Oh, you did, right. Thank you so much. I was so excited about the questions. Oh, no, okay, sorry. 101 error. Right, okay. I have been given a list. It's been drawn in an order. It's been drawn out for everyone to give their 2 minutes. You're being timed. There's a timer, I think, as well. A little bell will go off. Is that right? I think there's a bell. Okay, you're the bellman, okay? Right, so the first person up is Stephen Donnelly. And Stephen, the question for you, which everyone will be answering, what is your vision for your constituency and for the nation if you get elected?
Thank you. Evening all, I'm delighted to be here. I'm suffering slightly from post-traumatic stress. The last time I was in this hall, I think Sister Anna gave me detention. Misbehaving somewhere over there. So look, very quickly, in 2 minutes, 2 local issues, 2 national issues. School places, locally, it's coming up every single day. For Templecarrig, for Davids, for the new school for Charlesland, for Closh the Craveowen, for the schools in Bray, for St Andrews, for Educate Together. It's a serious issue. It's not a political issue. We all need to work together, put as much pressure as possible on the department, make the case based on the demographics, get the new schools in place. Second local issue is the N11. It's absolutely crippling commuters. I had a fantastic meeting with the NTA about 2 or 3 months ago with Wicklow County Council and the Wicklow Town team. We proposed turning the hard shoulders into bus corridors, more express buses, park and rides, higher frequency DART, higher frequency diesel. The NTA have agreed to it. They've already started funding Wicklow County Council to do the design work for the hard shoulders. So all of this talk about motorways going through Delgany in 15 years' time, personally, I want to kill that stone dead. I want an integrated public transport solution that means the first and best option is public transport. If and when needed, you use the car, and basically it's an environmentally friendly solution, and it can happen in the coming years rather than the next 15 years. 2 national issues. Housing. Again, the issue is so serious, it shouldn't be one to be batted around politically. We need several 100,000 houses, and all parties have good ideas on that. We need to look very carefully at it, but most importantly, I started off life as an engineer. The most important thing is to basically get onto the ground and start working with the people who can get these houses built. The Fianna Fáil's commitment is 200,000 houses in the next 5 years. Second national issue is health. I think probably Simon and I are maybe the only 2 candidates running who actually want to be the health minister after the next election. The situation is serious. We have a great plan called Sláinte Care. But more is needed. There's a very serious emergency in terms of access, a very serious emergency in terms of our clinicians. They're burnt out, they're overwhelmed. So there's a lot of things I want to see brought in very quickly to deal with the emergency, to allow the space to implement Sláinte Care. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask, sorry, you're late, so I'm going to ask the candidates to stay with their mics, otherwise there'll be a lot of travel. So the next up to give the 2 minutes is Simon Harris, please.
Well, thank you very much. So I shall sit down then to save time. Firstly, I want to thank St. David's and Templecarrig for hosting tonight's debate. I too very much feel like it's good to be back because obviously I had the honour of going to the school. I left in 2004, and in fact I learned how to debate in this school from Miss Brosnan and Miss Bulger, so they are to blame perhaps for when I waffle on the television and the radio. So thank you, St. David's, for teaching me that. Tonight's a really important night, and I want to use the night to have an opportunity to talk to you about the future, to talk to you about what I believe we can do if we work together as a community over the next few years, to talk about how we can make more progress on our schools. We already have sanction for an extension here for St. David's, thanks to really good work by your principal, Miss O'Doherty. We're looking for sanction for an extension to Templecarrig. We have a new school coming for Charles, and we need an extension for Colostra Crevauen. So we need to talk. We need a home for North Wicklow Educate Together. We need to talk about how we're going to meet the school needs here in the future. We need to talk about commuter issues. I actually agree with Stephen in relation to public transport being the quickest way to actually solve the gridlock. That's more darts and increased train service and park and ride facilities. We need to talk about housing. We need to talk about how we actually get back to making sure that you, when you leave St. David's or leave Templecarrig, can actually buy your own home. How do you save a deposit? And we have some ideas in that regard. Childcare as well. So I think the challenge for the next government is going to be twofold. It's going to be to keep our people safe, to keep our people safe through Brexit, to make sure our economy keeps growing so that we have money to do all of these things. And secondly, the job for government is to improve our public services. When it comes to health, we need to stop playing politics with this, stop blaming each other, shouting at each other, and everyone pretending they have easy solutions. There is one plan. It's called Sláinte Care, and we all need to get on now with actually delivering it. So I hope tonight through the questions, which I know based on going into politics and society classes in Wicklow already will be tough and challenging, I hope we have a chance to discuss that. And I hope on Saturday the 8th of February, all of you, particularly our new voters, go out and cast your vote and have your say about the future of our town, our county and our country. Garmagat.
Thank you very much. That's Simon Harris. And I've got Jennifer Whitmore from the Social Democrats. Your 2 minutes. Do you want to do it up here? Or? Yeah, do it up here.
Hello, everyone. I think I might lead the step, actually. My name is Jennifer Whitmore, and I am the Social Democrats candidate for Wicklow. I'm a fisheries scientist by background, and I lived in Australia for 10 years, where I worked with the New South Wales Government, developing policy and law in relation to water management and climate change. When we moved back from Australia in 2010, just after the crash, it was obvious to everyone that we needed major change in how we did politics in this country and on how we made our decisions. And those changes are still needed. I've been a Greystones councillor now for 6 years, and I've been honoured to work very closely with you to deliver projects that are important to all of us. I believe that my expertise in legislation and policy development, combined with my knowledge of our local communities, will make me a very effective TD for our county. Wicklow has been left behind when it comes to investment. But you know this because you live it every day. You struggle to get your children into creche and school. You sit for hours behind the wheel of a car. You worry about whether the bus will get you into college or whether you'll ever be able to afford to rent or buy a home. There has been a fundamental lack of investment in these very basic services for many years, and we are now feeling the brunt of it. But we have the money in this country. It's just prioritised wrong. A perfect example of this is the N11. The first instinct when we find out that we have too many cars on the N11 is to build another road, hundreds of millions down the tube, rather than investing in public transport. We need a mindset shift. But I'm an optimist, and I believe that that change can happen. We just need to put people into the Dáil that will work with our communities, listen to their needs, and apply strategic thinking to decision making. And I hope to be that voice for you and for all of Wicklow. Thank you.
Okay, we have some rogue people getting to the podium, but I think it's going to be easier if you stay on your seats. So Stephen Matthews, the Green Party, if you wouldn't mind staying in your seat, if you don't mind, otherwise we're wasting time. You know, it's like school.
Thank you. My name is Stephen Matthews. I'm your Green Party candidate for Wicklow, and it's a pleasure to be here this evening to discuss our various parties' policies and to answer some of the questions you've submitted to us. My background is in planning and environmental management. That's what I studied in DIT. I've worked for the last about 25 years on railway signalling and engineering, so I have a very good background in transport as well. I think over the next 5 to 10 years is critical for this country, and the decisions we take next Friday or next Saturday at the ballot box is going to decide what parties go into power and what policies get implemented. Climate change, to me, is the most serious issue that we face, and it's going to affect every aspect of society, and it doesn't matter where you work or where you live, it's going to have an impact on your life. It's going to have an impact on future generations. The Green Party have been, and myself, I've been involved in environmental projects and working and studying climate change for the last 20 years, 25. Some of my colleagues in the Green Party have been at it for 40 years. I think that's why it's crucial the policies we're putting forward offer practical solutions to deal with the issues that we have in terms of lack of public transport, in terms of housing, the way we farm, the way we generate the energy in this country to heat our homes and to light our homes. So we have decisions to make. And in addressing those decisions and how we decide to go forward, we build a resilient economy. If we're dependent on fossil fuels, there is no economy in the world that has a future that's dependent on fossil fuels. There is no country that will have any success if it is a high carbon emitting country. We really have to take steps and measures, and I do believe my party has those policies, and I would be delighted to go to the national stage with my background in planning and transport and environmental management to implement policies at a national level that will help Wicklow and future generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone so far, by the way, for being on time. It's very helpful. Next up on my list is Seamus Connor with Aim 2.
Do you mind if I stand? Because otherwise I'll be... I'm just going to stand because otherwise half the room won't see me, so apologies. My name is Seamus Connor. I'm 35 years of age. I'm a secondary school teacher just down the road in Templecarrig. So I'd like to sincerely thank all the students for putting this on. It's a pleasure to be here, and I think it's wonderful to see young people getting involved and being enthusiastic about voting, about politics, so well done. I'd like to talk about what I'm passionate about. I've never been a member of a party before in my life. I have never ran before in a local election or a general election. The reason I'm running is I feel we can do better. We can do better for the people of Wicklow, and I am sincere about that. The reason I'm running is because I care about all the people of Wicklow. Young and old, gay and straight, black and white, female and male. I care. I want to help. And I know you might say, well, we've heard it all before. We've heard this all before. I could just say that to get votes. Well, there's people in this room who will vouch for me that I've been working for the last 15 years on environmental issues. In 2007, I set up Bray Coast Care Group. For 14 years nearly now, we've been doing a monthly clean-up of Bray Head, the Cliff Walk, the prom, the beach, the harbour, the rivers. I am passionate about our environment, and I want to see change. I have a licence. I can drive if I want to. I choose to get the bus. In terms of public transport and the N11, I believe the solution is not simply to cut down trees and build more roads. It is to fix our broken public transport system. It is to have more reliability when it comes to getting the bus to work. As I said, I'm a secondary school teacher. It's embarrassing when I have to call up the principal of Templecarrig to say that because the bus didn't show up, that the students are going to be waiting outside. There's lots of other issues. One other issue very quickly I want to just mention, I'm big into mental health. I think we need to do a lot more, especially for the youth in our society. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next on the list is John Brady from Sinn Féin.
Thanks, Jill, and I'll stand up so everyone can see me. First of all, thank you, Jill, for moderating here this evening, and thank the organisers, particularly the young people that have organised this, and it's great to see young people actively participating in politics, so well done, everyone. My name is John Brady. I'm a public representative for the last 16 years on the local authorities, but for the last 4 years, I've been a TD representing Wicklow, and I think I've earned a reputation of being a hard-working public representative over those 14 years, representing people from north to south, east to west. This country and Wicklow were in a complete crisis. The issues here in Greystones and across Wicklow are the same issues affecting us at a national level. We have crisis in our housing system, we have homelessness, our health service is in tatters, We have people looking to be an incoming Minister for Health closing down our A&Es in Loughlinstown. We have a crisis in our public transport system. We have crisis in our education system where our secretaries in our schools are out on picket lines protesting. We have our teachers threatening to go out on strike. We have schools and children fighting, going on protests to try get the basic right to a school place in their local school. Our country is in a shambles. And I don't say that without providing solutions, because I do provide solutions to all of these crises. We have the two main parties, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, in government for the last 100 years or thereabouts since the foundation of this state. And I'm asking people, if you want to change, if you want to address all of the crises right across our society in Wicklow and across the state, we need to have change and look at the alternatives and the solutions that will work to address all of those issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to ask Valerie Cox, also independent, to do your 2 minutes.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me this evening. You know when something pops up on Facebook every day and reminds you what you were doing a few years ago? Well, this morning I got a pop-up reminding me that 4 years ago today I was on the Greek island of Kos working as a volunteer with the refugees. And that day we had 8 funerals. We buried 4 adults, 2 toddlers and 2 teenagers. And later that day, that evening, I was sitting on the beach as the boats were coming in. And I was quite a novice at this. And it's very dangerous in the shallows because a lot of people drown at that stage because they panic. And we went out, we were pulling a boat in. This woman handed me her clothes all wrapped up in a bundle. And I thought, oh, hang on a second now. You know, you're fighting for your life and you're worried about your clothes. And I walked onto the beach and I had a newborn baby in the bundle. These people are desperate. And the reason I want to bring this up is, you know, we're part of a global society. And what's happening to these people, and particularly the children, they're fleeing from persecution, they're fleeing from war. Many of them being killed. They come in with the most atrocious wounds. And we are part of this global society. And it's very important that young people take their place with that. And are a voice for other young people around the world. Secondly, very briefly, I want to mention carers. I'm very supportive of family carers everywhere in Ireland, and it might surprise you to know that we have 57,000 young carers in this country. That's people under 18 years of age who are looking after a parent, a sibling, a grandmother or whatever, and doing that in addition to their normal lives, to studying and so on. I've done several programs on these people, I've met them, and they're absolutely extraordinary. And because there's 57,000, there's a very good chance some of them are here in your school. That's just a taste of what I'm standing for in this election. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Valerie. John Larkin, also independent. I could get your 2 minutes. You want to come up with this? All these roads.
I need my lectures.
You need the stand.
Probably as well. Have you got the ladder? No. My name is John Larkin and I'm from Newtown, Mount Kennedy. I spent all my working life in the health services, and that was the Eastern Helper when we did have a healthcare system, and then along comes the HSE and it wrecked it on us. So there's, over those 40 years, there's nothing that I haven't done, or there's nothing I don't know about the health services and how I could fix it. So I have chosen this evening two items, or 2 issues. One is healthcare to make Wicklow a better place, and the other is crime prevention to make Wicklow a safer place. So I'm starting off with healthcare. So we have a choice of fixing the health service once and for all. Do we do what the parties would like, throw your money at it? That would be akin to throwing the most expensive deck chairs onto the Titanic. To those of us who know, to those who have worked in it for years, know that staff are frustrated. I spoke to a nurse at the weekend and she said it was the toxic management that was driving nurses out of the country. To those of us who know, we need 2 things. That's all we need. We need hard decisions and a direction. Our healthcare is at a crossroads. Do we go left back towards socialised medicine, or do we proceed down the road to the right, as we are doing lately, towards US Wild West money-driven medicine? That's what they have in the US, money-driven medicine. Big decision number one is getting primary care to open from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., as that was the way it used to be, as heretofore. People get sick after 5 p.m., and I knew ever before I knocked on a door that CareDoc, a degraded rota system, is not working. People can't wait, so they either head to A&E or call an ambulance. Healthcare is 24/7, it's 365, 366, and that's one of the reasons why I have overcrowding in our A&Es. Decision number two is, how do we solve the problem of the shortage of GPs in training and retaining them for our people? My proposal, and that affects you, is just like France, that we offer medical students free medical education. Now, this is what really affects it, thus giving every child in our country an equal opportunity to become a state doctor as if they have the requisite points. We Irish are a generous nation. We give over our hospitals and our patients to medical students to practice in return. I ask them to commit to those patients by quitting them for 6 to 8 years. Thank you.
You're very good. Thank you so much. Sorry for doing that.
I got the time yet.
It goes so quickly. And people have very important things to say, and I hope maybe you'll network later as well. We'll hear more things.
And lastly but not least, we have Joe Behan, an independent, also with his 2 minutes.
And I first of all want to start, ladies and gentlemen, and particularly students in Templecarrig and St David's, I want to start with an apology. I hadn't responded to the invitation to attend, and it did cause a major problem for the organisers by turning up at the last minute, and I want to thank you very much for facilitating me, and apologies for not getting back to you in sufficient time. I'm delighted, though, to be here, particularly to listen to what you have to say, and particularly to hear what the students have to say. It was so fantastic to see that so many of you had registered to vote. And from my point of view, as one of the independent candidates running in the election, the one point I would make to you before you cast your ballot is to think about the fact that most of the candidates running are going to represent a party if they get elected. They will have to obey a party whip. They will not have to obey what you say or what you want done. They will have to obey what their party leadership tells them to do. I know that for a fact because I was a party TD. I was a Fianna Fáil TD in 2007. I resigned the party whip in 2008 because the then government withdrew medical cards from people over 70 and made class sizes in primary schools larger than they already were, and I was a primary school teacher. So I know what it's like to be in a party. I know what it's like to be told what to do. I think in this election we should have at least one person out of the 5 representatives who go to Dáil Éireann who can speak for you, who will not be afraid to stand up and make your concerns the concerns of the entire Dáil in Leinster House. And if I get that opportunity, that's what I will do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wow. So we have some commonality of themes. We have some commonality of themes that are going to come up. They're also going to be reflected in the questions. And we have some different themes coming up. But again, sorry, now Leah, I did ask you earlier, so apologies. You have a question you're from St David's. Leah Elliott, would you perhaps read out your first question? Do you have a microphone?
Yeah, just if she raises her hand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Dum,
Not
dum,
as
dum.
fast as I used to be.
The current healthcare sector is under a lot of strain and has come under a lot of scrutiny in the last year. How do we ensure that this remains a country that can provide a top-class standard of healthcare? What needs to change in the current system, and how do we bring about this change?
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to start off with Seamus.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's a very good question. Thanks. As you can see, I've had, excuse the pun, first-hand experience of the healthcare system in our country over the last number of days. I'll tell you briefly what happened. I was putting up a poster, and it's ironic, isn't it? And a lot of people are probably thinking, well, it serves you right. You shouldn't be putting up posters, and I agree. So before I answer the question, what I will say is, in terms of healthcare and the danger of putting up posters, not to mention the environmental impact, I am proposing in front of the cameras, in front of all of you witnesses, that for the future local and general elections, we have no posters on lampposts. Okay? No, seriously, we have no posters. And what I will propose is a sensible proposal that in every town and village we have one large board, a bit like that board there, the white board, but bigger obviously if we have 19, 20 candidates, and we have one poster, just one, per candidate, and that's it. That
brilliant. But you know what I'm going to suggest? Will you answer
Stick
the
to the,
question?
stick to, I'm not even a politician and I'm acting, but sorry. So, when I was in hospital for 3 days, I had a broken wrist. And I witnessed firsthand the lack of resources that we have in Ireland. It's not working. The system is broken. I was on a trolley for both nights that I was in the hospital. And I'm 35, I can manage that. I was saddened to see the elderly men and women in their 80s sometimes, clinging on to trolleys, not beds, trolleys, in packed corridors, not rooms, corridors, with fear in their faces. No dignity, no privacy. And so to answer your question, we need to resource more frontline staff. We need less mismanagement of finance in our health system. And we need to get our act together soon, because there are people dying in corridors, in our hospitals, in Wicklow, well, there's no hospitals in Wicklow, in Ireland, okay? And I'm passionate about this, and if you vote for me, I will really hold those responsible to account. Thank you.
Thank you. And any more supplementary? I'll come to you in a minute, maybe, Sam, if you don't mind. Maybe Valerie, because one of your issues, I know, is the trolley crisis.
The situation in our hospitals is appalling. And a big part of my own campaign is older people, because when you get to 65 in this country, the attitude is, would you please just crawl into the corner there and die quietly? At the moment, we have 100 elderly people in hospital beds from Wicklow who cannot get home because they haven't been given a care package in order to support that. If you want to go into a nursing home, you will be given the Fair Deal scheme. If you want to stay in your own home, there's nothing. There should be a new deal for people who'd like to stay in their own home when they come to their latter years or they become ill or whatever happens to them. I met a woman yesterday whose young son had just had an operation cancelled. It was to do with his spine. I don't know the details. It was cancelled 2 weeks ago, and he's been told it will now take 13 months for another one. What sort of a country are we when we can't look after our most vulnerable people, be they children or adults? And, you know, the problem is just lack of joined up thinking. If they sat down and figured it out, they could realise how they could save an awful lot of money. If you're an elderly person in this country and you need rehab, and I've been there with my husband, it's so hard to get that we almost had to take him abroad to get that service. Eventually I got it here. But it's very, very difficult, make no mistake about it, and you'll all be old someday, if you're lucky.
I think that's the hard thing to imagine. So for young people, it's very hard to imagine we get old. We never get old. Jennifer, just one comment there, and I'll go on to the next question then.
Thank you very much. We've all heard the stories, and some of them are absolutely heartbreaking about what happens in our health system. But the good news is there is actually a plan, and the plan is called Sláintecare. After the last election, Roisin Shortall, who's co-leader of the Social Democrats, which is the party I'm running for, said we need to take politics out of health. We all need to come together and come up with a vision for healthcare in our country. And they did that. All the parties came together, they brought the experts in, and they came up with this Sláintecare reform package and programme. It is a 10-year vision for healthcare in this country, and it essentially turns healthcare on its head. It means that healthcare will happen in the community, where it is better for the patient, it is better for the families, and it is actually cheaper to deliver. So that plan is there. And what we need now is to make sure during the course of the next Dáil that all parties continue with their commitment to that, because unfortunately the implementation of it has not been as quick as it should have. And it is absolutely something that we need to focus on. It's historic that we have this opportunity to completely reform our health system. It is something that has happened in every country in Europe, and we have not managed it here. A single-tier health system that is based on need and not ability to pay. We have an opportunity. We need to make sure we get that implemented over the course of the next Dáil. Thank you.
I will come to you in a minute. I think, John, you want to have one quick point, please, on this. This is a very popular topic, and I will come to the Minister for Health, obviously, in a moment, but because he has a bit to say, and we'll come to him. John, maybe?
Yeah, it's just that I hear a lot about Sláintecare, but how far down the road is it going to happen? It's not much good tonight to people on trolleys around the country. It's not good. Either is it any good for people on waiting lists. Like, Sláintecare reminds me of a scene from Father Ted. You know the one where Father Jack goes off in a wheelchair, and Ted has this fishing rod, and at the end of the fishing rod there's a bottle of whiskey, and that's frustrating. Like, you know, it's so frustrating for people. Like, there's no kind of timelines, there's no plan. Like it's saying, like every time something happens in the healthcare, it's oh Sláintecare, oh Sláintecare. Like, geez, where is it? Like, you know, I mean, we know Sláinte is help, but it's not happening, and it's not happening fast enough. Like it's silly to say we've had community care since 1970. I worked in community care. We had the best community care they could possibly get in Wicklow, and it's all around Eastern Helper. So community care is nothing new. They try to change it to primary care just to confuse people, but we've had community care since 1970, since the Health Act came in 1970. So, like, Sláintecare is like
so you're not a fan of the Sláintecare?
Yeah,
okay.
I'm not. No, but it's just like people that never work. What annoys me about Sláintecare is it's great for people, but they've never worked in the health world, and it's easy just to drop that on.
I'm going to go on because I'm going to take your comments, and then I'm going to go to the Minister for Health because you'll have lots to answer, obviously. So, John Brady, you wanted to say something very quickly? Just one line, because this is only the first question.
No, look, I mean, we're hitting record levels of our citizens lying on hospital trolleys, and people remember when Mary Harney was Minister for Health a few years ago, when we hit a certain number, I can't remember what it was, I think there was 400 people lying on trolleys. She called it a national emergency to deal with it. Here we are with figures doubling that now at this point of people, citizens, young and old, lying on hospital trolleys. We have Sláintecare, but we need to invest in that. And unfortunately, we have our nurses out on strike, our best qualified young nurses emigrating because of the pay issues within our health service. That needs to be addressed. We need to bring in more nurses, frontline staff, we need to open more beds, and we also need to ensure that people who are forced to remain in hospitals because of the lack of home care hours being provided to them, we need them additional hours to ensure people can get out of hospitals into their homes where they can be looked after properly. So it's freeing up more beds, investing more beds in the system, and looking after our nurses and our frontline staff.
This is obviously the hot topic for the panel, and Pearl Simon's waiting very patiently to rebuttal this. Just a one-liner from you, Joe.
Okay, my one line is I want to pay tribute to Simon Harris for the work he has done as Minister for Health. Nobody can deny he's extremely hard-working. I might not agree with everything he does, but I do think he is definitely doing his best. And one area that I think he has made great progress on is the provision of primary care centres, and there's going to be a new one opening in Bray very shortly. And that is part of the solution. But I want to put one other idea out here tonight for you to consider. In this country at the moment, our population is about to increase over the next couple of years to 5 million. So that means we've 1 million extra people than we had 10 years ago. A lot of people are staying older, they're growing older, you know, they're staying alive longer. So they're going to have more medical conditions as we go forward into the future. The present hospital system, the acute hospital for Wicklow is St. Vincent's. It is not able to cope with the number of patients it currently has to take on, and it certainly won't cope into the future. My proposal, and you may think it's outlandish, but I'm putting it for you to consider. We should have another acute hospital on the east coast of Ireland. It should be based in County Wicklow, on lands at Newcastle Hospital, provided by the HSE, built by the state, and available for all of the people of County Wicklow to use. That's
Thank you very much.
proposal.
If it's a minute, only a minute. One, and then...
So I agree with a lot of what's been said. Just in case there's anyone here who hasn't read the 170 pages of Sláintecare. Sláintecare is a great idea, and Jennifer's absolutely right. The politics has hopefully been taken out of it, and I think there is all-party consensus on it. It is really important. Essentially what it is a 10-year plan for universal healthcare in this country. So there's a single-tier system. So when you get sick, you can get high-quality care when you need it. That's what Sláintecare is. It's absolutely the right thing, and we are all committed to it, and it is incredibly important. However, before I took a mad figari in 2011 and gave up a perfectly good job to be a TD, what I was doing was healthcare reform abroad. And it takes time. And Sláintecare knows that. Sláintecare is a 10-year plan. And since it's been written, it was written 3.5 years ago, access has collapsed. And we all know that. Everyone in the room will know someone who's waiting years for something urgent. We know that. And so while we implement Sláintecare, we have to deal with the emergency, which is where you bring in things like the National Treatment Purchase Fund. So if you're waiting more than 6 months, I met a guy today who's in agony for the last 2.5 years because he can't get a neck operation. If you're waiting more than 6 months, you use the fund. And actually, that approach is catered for within Sláinte Care as well. So we need emergency measures, and we need to manage the money. Healthcare is incredibly expensive, and we have to make sure that, you know, we don't see billion euro overspends on hospitals, these kind of things happening again. We have to manage the money we have very, very carefully. So 3 things: implement Sláinte Care, deal with the emergency today, and get really serious about making sure that the money that we all put into the healthcare system is used as effectively as possible.
Thank you indeed. Now, before I let the Minister for Health reply, there's actually a question which actually will lead into your reply, you can answer. So Sarah Gallagher is here, I believe. Sarah Gallagher from Templecarrig. If you want to ask your question, this will lead, you can answer the other questions. Not for ages now, you're only a few minutes. Yeah, I know, exactly. You're only the Minister for Health. So Sarah, your question, please.
What have you done today to support healthcare in your constituency, and how do you plan to further support health needs of your constituents if you're elected?
Okay.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And look, I think this has been a really good conversation. So firstly, directly on that, since I've been Minister for Health, we've worked really hard to try and invest in our local health service. And I thank Joe for his kind words in that regard. If you go to Bray now, you have a state-of-the-art primary care centre due to open in April on the Killarney Road, just there behind McDonald's. That's not healthy, though. And within that, crucially, within that primary care centre, there'll be an X-ray facility. And there'll be an ultrasound. So I don't know the situation of your own injury, Seamus, but in future people should be able to go and get their X-rays here in our county without having to go to Loughlinstown or Vincent. So that is Sláinte Care, taking things out of the hospital and putting them in the community. I've worked with the community to make sure we could open the Wicklow Hospice. Incredible fundraising work done by lots and lots of people. There was a shortfall, though, of €1.25 million. We stepped forward and provided that and met the running costs. So we now finally have, thanks to the blood, sweat and tears of so many people in this county, a state-of-the-art Wicklow Hospice opening with the first patients going in there, I believe, in March. We have a 24/7 GP service based out of Loughlinstown Hospital. We never had one of these before. So many of you might remember. I remember when I was a kid, if you got sick in the middle of the night and your mum or dad phoned the doctor, you may wait for 12, 13, 14 hours for some doctor from somewhere in the country to come to your house. The local GPs in Greystones, Bray, got together and they said, can we actually set up in Loughlinstown Hospital a GP out of ours? Dr. Marie Hogan was leading the charge on this, and it's based on her clinical experience. You now have a 24/7 GP service in Loughlinstown called EDOC, and also a service where the GPs can go to our nursing homes. And the next step for Wicklow has to be, I think Joe is right on this, whether it's an acute hospital or not, I don't know, but we need a master plan for the Newcastle Hospital site, and we also need to use Loughlinstown Hospital for step-down facilities. There are many people in their 80s and 90s in St Vincent's who need care, they need to be looked after, but they could be looked after very well in Loughlinstown, freeing up beds in Vincent's and being cared for better. On healthcare, I don't want to go back on old ground, just to say, Jennifer's right. I worked very closely with Roisin Shortall, who chaired the committee, the leader of Jennifer's party, the co-leader of the party. Lots of politicians did from across the political divide. We have a really good plan. I've sat in the office of Minister for Health. The door closes after you. There aren't any easy solutions. But the solution is to stop playing politics. Every time a new minister comes with a bright, new, shiny plan, the system just outweights that minister, and the next guy comes and the next girl comes with another plan. The benefit this time is, for the first time ever, we have a plan that everyone said, this is what we're doing in Sláinte Care. And the final point I want to make on it, though, is we can all be in favour of the nice and fluffy bits of Sláinte Care. We're all in favour of more this and more that. We have to take hard decisions. There's too many managers in the health service, and the HSE is too bureaucratic. I brought in a new guy called Paul Reid to run the health service. We have to have a voluntary redundancy scheme for some of the middle management of the HSE. There's too many managers in this country, in our health service, for a country that has a population the size of Manchester. And the second thing we need to do is we need to pay our doctors a hell of a lot more. I'm offering them a salary of $252,000, the highest salary for any hospital consultant in the European Union. But there's a quid pro quo. They're going to have to work differently. We can't have MRIs shutting down at 5 or 6 o'clock. It's a 24/7 healthcare system, so we will need people to do different rosters and different shifts as well. So these are some of the decisions that we're going to act on in 2020. But not everything in health is bad. Not everything in health is bad. When people get into our health service, they have a great experience in many cases. Our outcomes are improving. You have a greater chance of surviving cancer here now than in the UK. We've provided life-saving drugs for cystic fibrosis patients. So yes, there are lots and lots of challenges. Lots of things are good. The challenges can be overcome, but only if we work together.
Thank you.
Jillian.
I'll come back to you in a bit. I'll come back. Because we keep on going, because there's quite a lot to talk about.
Just
well,
sorry.
Seriously, because this...
We did have, sorry, just take 2 seconds.
I'm going to time it.
Yeah. No, Simon mightn't be old enough to remember, but when we had the Eastern Health Board, we did have a system that... It's on the good side. The point I'm making is that we had a system that worked, the GPs worked till 9 o'clock at night, and then the rota system kicked in. So nobody was waiting 13 hours. That's cared of. You were waiting about an hour or less, and the chances were you would get your own doctor anyway. So you had the GPs working till 9 o'clock.
Do you know what's interesting? I think what you're addressing is some of the administrational requirements inside the hospital. So it's not the strategic.
No,
so
this is the GPs working in the community.
I'm going to leave it there.
Greystones had their own rota, and Newtown.
John, I'm going to leave it there because there's a lot there in the health, and I'm conscious of the time. I'm going to move on. Right, I'm going to take a different topic now. I'm going to ask Ross Balfe of St. David's to read out his question. Where's
Well, the idea proposed to make significant changes to the N11 will impact our countryside. Surely this is a step in the wrong direction, as this is another example of destroying our natural world. Sorry, lost my train of thought. But this will lead to a greater volume of commuters, leading to more carbon. Do you support these plans, or do you support alternative plans?
I'd like Stephen perhaps to come in here, please.
Thank you for your question. It's a very topical issue in Wicklow at the moment. It's probably one of the biggest issues, certainly on the east coast of Wicklow. When the plans come out, first of all, there seemed to be a rush by all the parties. I know most of the parties represented on the stage here tonight come out with, we must fast-track this plan. And then I think they stood back and realised that public opinion had passed by the current political thinking. And the Green Party came out very quickly to say, hold on, this is not the way to go. We don't draw lines on maps and propose new roads and wide roads and extra roads. Anybody who's ever studied transport will tell you that putting an extra lane on a road has never solved congestion. You create what's called induced demand. The congestion gets worse. There's obviously very sensitive landscapes that had lines drawn. I don't know if anybody has seen the maps that came out at the Phase 2 consultation. Several different coloured lines across very sensitive landscapes through people's properties. No environmental impact assessments were available for anybody. People were asked to select a preferred route based on a line on a map. And it pitted different communities against each other. And that's not the way we need to do transport. We need to have significant investment in public transport. We haven't for many, many years, and that's been political decisions. There's been no political will to invest in rural bus services. We have a train line on the east coast of Wicklow that has perfect capability to serve a higher frequency. Public transport needs to be affordable. It needs to be high frequency. It needs to be reliable. It needs to be comfortable. They're the main things about public transport. We have a train down there, 3 trains up in the morning and 3 down in the evening. It's just not enough. There were decisions made not to include Wicklow in the National Transport Study, and Wicklow has been left behind. You've also got to consider the environmental aspect of it as well. Most our carbon emissions come from 3 main sources. That's agriculture, energy, and transport. And the trajectory of transport emissions is only increasing. We're going to face fines from Europe, somewhere between 150 and 300 million per annum, because we're failing to meet our emissions targets. So we really have to consider this. We have to look back and say, are we just going to go roads-based? Are we going to just corral people into roads again? And the stresses that brings into people's lives, spending 2 hours on a day in the morning trying to commute up and 2 hours back in the evening, not getting home in time for dinners or to spend time with their children. It has impacts on the quality of life. It has impacts on our environment. It has impacts on air quality. And it's just not the way to go. And we're proposing in our transport budget to allocate 10% of the transport budget towards cycling infrastructure, 10% towards walking infrastructure, better permeability and linkage through towns and safe routes to schools. And we take the remainder of that budget and we spend it 2-to-1 on public transport and not on roads.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Seamus wants to get in, but you're not going to talk about your posters. No, okay, no. It is, I think, yeah.
Sorry. Is that on? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I'd echo a lot of what Stephen has said, and Stephen's a good friend of mine, and he has talked a lot of sense there. as I said, public transport is key, okay? I don't think the solution is to chop down loads of trees and to put in extra lanes. If you look at America, there's 6 lanes on one side, there's 6 lanes on the other, and there's still traffic. You put in new lanes, you get more cars on the road. What we need to do is look at the root causes of this congestion, of 3 hours each day for our citizens in Wicklow travelling to work in Dublin and back. And one of the solutions I would suggest is that we keep business in our wonderful county. Therefore, you do not have all these thousands and thousands of cars going into Dublin to work. And we can do that. We can bring business to Wicklow and keep our citizens in our county and allow them more time with their children after work instead of sitting in gridlock. And that is something I would do. I would encourage everyone, and the young people here as a teacher, I'd obviously encourage you, like I do with my students in CCA, to use public transport where you can. But I get the frustration that you try your best to be environmentally friendly and get a bus or get a dart. There is not enough frequency with darts in Greystones. You're sitting there, standing there in the rain sometimes for a half an hour. There should, I would propose, and Aintu would propose, that the dart is extended to Wicklow town. That would take cars off the N11 and people could commute to work on the dart. Thank you.
Following on that line, we're talking about climate now and your students. So we have a question from Ben Lumley. Is Ben Lumley here? Is there a mic? There's a mic coming to you, Ben, here, look.
So, how do you plan to work with students campaigning for climate change if elected? And would they factor heavily into your policy making, or would your policies be dictated more by the party you may or not you're elected with and you may be in coalition with?
Thank you. I'm going to ask that to Jennifer, please.
Thank you very much. The youth voice is incredibly important in the climate change and biodiversity debate. In March of this year, Wicklow County Council declared a climate and biodiversity emergency, and that was driven by the youth voices in the Greystones district primarily. It came through the Greystones District Council. We put the motion forward as councillors, and Wicklow County Council and my colleagues on the council supported that motion, and we declared the crisis. Now, I was very, very aware that, what I didn't want to happen was this was a big virtue signal. And we declared this crisis and we didn't follow with anything. So as soon as I was re-elected, I worked with some of my fellow councillors, some here on up on the stage with me, and we actually drove and made sure that there was a policy committee that was in Wicklow County Council that was directly responsible for climate action and biodiversity. As part of that, one of the first things, I'm actually chair of that committee, and one of the first things that we did was actually include a representative from Corlin na Og. Now, Corlin na Og, for those of you who aren't aware, is the Youth Council of Ireland, and it's all the youth voices are represented on this council, and we have one in Wicklow. So we now have a representative, for the first time in the history of the state, someone who is under 18 is actually represented on a policy committee with Wicklow County Council. I'm very, very proud to have been part of that decision. You will actually take the baton from us in this. You will drive us to make changes that we should have made a long time ago, and then you will take over from us in policy making and decision making and implementation of that policy. It's also incredibly important, I think, though, that we also include our elders within these discussions as well. Because one thing that's happened in our society is when we look out and we see our biodiversity, we look at our countryside, we now think that that's normal. But actually 40 years ago, 50 years ago, we had far more species. People lived differently. They had a very different relationship with their environment. And I think it's very important that we actually include the elders and our elderly people in our communities, their voices also in this debate, because they have an awful lot that we can learn from. So I think it's important to include everybody and make sure that that happens. And I will absolutely continue on that path if elected. Thank you.
John wants to get in there, John Brady. I know you're in the minute, Joe, but John wants to get in first.
Thanks,
Another
Jill.
question for you.
No, thank you for the question. It's a really important question, and I think it's young activists actually driving the agenda here. I think of people like Greta Thunberg, who inspired the school strikes, and that has spread right over the world. And I have actively taken part in a number of strikes here in Greystones outside the Dáil, when thousands upon thousands of young people marched to the front gates of the Dáil, setting the agenda, forcing their politicians to sit up and stop being laggards and start meeting the climate, the emission targets that for this year, 2020, Ireland has missed. We are laggards. So we need to keep pushing the agenda. And I think back, you know, I first got involved in activism. I'm going to let you in on a little secret now, and it ties in with the N11 and the upgrade. 20 years ago, I was an activist that participated in stopping the roadworks going through the Glen Downs. I was an eco-warrior at that stage, and that opened my eyes to the whole issue that was going on at that stage. And at that time, I said I was involved in that because it was only going to push the problem further down the road, excuse the pun. But here we are 20 years later, and we're dealing with an exact same issue. So look, young people are inspiring. You just need to keep pushing, because that's what drives politicians on. That's what forces change. And I was one of the very few TDs to actually sit in the Dáil when young people from right around the country sat in for a day within the Dáil, discussing, debating the whole issue of climate change and the biodiversity crisis as well. So
Thank you,
look,
John.
keep up the great work, guys.
Okay,
and you have my
there's
total
another question I
support.
want to get to, but I've been promised two very short comments. You know, you're going to Simon, but very short, because there's another question that's related that I want to bring in.
Very briefly. So firstly, in relation to youth and youth involvement in this, and are we going to listen to you? Absolutely we are, and you'd want to be pretty stupid not to, because young people are driving this change. And when you see some of the, it's peculiar to see how uncomfortable some people get in this world when you have somebody like Greta Thunberg actually out front and centre and making world leaders uncomfortable on this. So thank you for what you've done so far, because you've already brought about change. Jennifer's outlined some of it at a local level. At a national level, what we need to do is a couple of things. We need to ban the single-use plastics, except perhaps for medical equipment, because we have an issue with that, but in general, ban single-use plastics. We need to look at supports for people in relation to electric cars, maybe moving some of the subsidies for diesel vehicles towards actually helping people purchase electric cars, and more supports in that regard. Investment in public transport, getting the Dart here in Greystones to every 20 minutes, getting the Lewis to Bray, rather than just talking about roads as well. We do need to support our farmers in diversifying, rather than kind of vilifying agriculture. We have to actually look at what are the solutions there. So looking at how they can use their land to maybe help plant, to grow different crops, to actually sell energy back to the national grid. And we intend also to ban oil and gas exploration in our country. So we do live in a climate emergency. It is a major challenge of our generation, and we need your leadership on it as well.
Thank you. So, just a quick, Stephen, because I have another related question that's very interesting.
Very brief now.
Yeah.
I would just say, don't give up the pressure that you're putting on politicians.
Fair
Don't
play.
have it that it's an election promise that they don't act on. You've got to trust a party that has, since 1987, had climate change in their manifesto. We have quite some history in the Green Party of looking at climate change and environmental issues. Thank you.
Now, there's a related question that actually ties in very nicely to this, and Aisling Dillon Roberts. Have you got a mic over to Aisling? It's that kind of, and it's very pertinent to Wicklow. So it's the Wicklow question, I guess.
Wicklow is a unique county in that it has a large commuter belt population who travel to Dublin every day, but also it has a large rural community who rely on farming to support their families and communities. How can we be environmentally fair to both populations of our community?
Joe.
Aisling, that's an absolutely excellent question, and it follows on from the previous excellent question, which is that you as young people, it's your future that we are supposed to be concerned about, and we are concerned about. And one of the issues I feel about climate change is very often there is a kind of a blame game going on, particularly with farmers and the agriculture sector, that in some way they're more responsible for the difficulties than any other sector. And I don't believe that. We are going to have to rely in the future, with an increasing population, on a stable food supply source, and we should be providing incentives for farmers to change from maybe their current production practices to ones that are more environmentally friendly, but we're going to have to depend on our farmers into the future. I would also make the point, if I could, you asked, the previous question was, will we listen to you as young people? The answer to that is yes. And the second part was, or are you going to be obeying your party? In my case, no, I won't. I'll be listening to you. I'll be doing the first part. I won't need to listen to the party. And I think that's very important. And the last point I'd make is, we've heard a lot of nice words here already about the environment. The vast majority of people who have given you the nice words are using tons of plastic, of unreusable plastic on their posters in this election. I am using no posters, whatsoever. I'm relying on social media and traditional campaigning door to door. So when you hear people who are talking about the environment, talking about climate, talking about listening to you, in fact, go out and look at the lampposts all around Greystones, and you'll see, in fact, how much they really are listening to you and how much they really care about the environment.
Okay, so posters come up again. I want to move on to another topic, but I will take a very brief, again, I want to get everyone's voices in. John, sorry, you expressed an interest to say something.
Just a couple of points. Rural Ireland and rural Wicklow has a critical part to play in addressing our climate crisis, but it's unfair to punish them. And when I hear proposals being put forward that, towns and villages should have 20 cars and everyone should carpool. I think of places like Carnew or Shalala where there is no public transport and people having to try get into those villages or towns to share a car, to try get to work to Dublin because there's no local jobs. We need to be real. We need to invest in our public transport, particularly rural transport, but we also need to look at what's going on at a national level. Whilst a lot of focus is on our farmers, in terms of reducing the herd numbers that they have, at the same time, this government has struck a deal called the Mercosur deal, people may have heard it, where they're going to import annually 99,000 tonnes of beef from South America. 99,000 tonnes of beef from South America. Think of the air miles travelling from South America to flood the Irish market with cheap, untraceable beef, and the impact that has on the very people that are being vilified in this debate.
Stephen.
I think the question you asked is actually one of the most profound questions of our generation, because essentially you've brought in rural and urban and Wicklow. And Wicklow is a very interesting place because in a way it's like a mini Ireland. We have coast, we have forest, we have mountain, we have bog, actually. We have rural, we have urban. And so if you can crack it for Wicklow, actually you have a model for the country. And what I hear from your question is basically, how do we live sustainably? It has to be economic sustainability, it has to be social sustainability, where everyone we don't leave people behind, and environmental sustainability. And I think part of the key, a lot of the answer in urban areas is changing how we live, changing how we consume, and in the rural areas, in the urban areas as well, but there's vast opportunity in the rural areas to change what happens. And there's a false dichotomy put out there that somehow if farmers, my father-in-law is a small farmer in Longford, if farmers start doing environmentally friendly things, somehow they'll resist that. But people don't resist change, people resist loss. And so if the message to farmers is you have to change how you live and it is going to make it unsustainable for you to put food on the table, they will resist that, as would every one of us in this room. So you got to make it a win. And there are some good programs there. They've been piloted and they need to be scaled up. So massive reforestation, not the monoculture stuff, proper native trees across the country. My father-in-law, for example, in one of his fields, there's a fund whereby he grows corn that's never cut. It's essentially fields for biodiversity. Beef production is heavily subsidised. So public funds are going there to subsidise something that a lot of farmers, a lot of small farmers, if you said, hey, what about getting rid of the 20 cows, the 30 cows, whatever it is, and doing this mixed, highly environmentally friendly, heavy on biodiversity activity as well, which can also be funded. And I think that's the key. We are more than capable of solving this problem. And if we do that, it doesn't become about winners and losers. It becomes about saying we must live in an environmentally, socially, and economically sustainable.
Yeah, I think the question is fair, isn't it? Because it's not just farmers do get vilified and they produce food and we mostly eat it. Sorry, Stephen wants to know.
In terms of farming is probably a sector that will be hit worse by climate change. So they have skin in the game. They need to solve this as well. But you need to look at the emissions, as about 1/3 of our carbon emissions comes from agriculture. So something has to be done there, but it's the industrial agricultural model is what the problem is. It's not the small farmer, small farming families. We need to work with them. They need to work closer with nature, rewilding the land, forestry. Stephen summed it up pretty well. Farmers know what needs to be done, but it's the heavy industrial farming model that is bad for farmers and is bad for our environment. Thank you.
Actually, let me just a quick point to ask the whole panel. Because we started late, are you happy for us to go on till after 9 o'clock? Yeah. And is the audience happy? You can walk with your feet, obviously. Okay, so I want to just take 2 more points and then get on to another issue that I want to bring up. So Seamus, I'll bring you in, but you've been in the health. So
Sorry, just on that, as I said, I'm a teacher. Getting back to very briefly the last question, I'll be brief. I fully support students getting involved. If I'm elected, I will work with my students and the students of Wicklow and take their ideas on board. And I commend you for your activism. And I've set up eco-committees in all the schools I've been in. The question the young lady asked about farmers and are they to blame? No, they're not. They shouldn't be vilified. The leader of Aintu, the party I'm running with, Peadar Tobin, brought a bill to Dáil Éireann to give farmers, rural farmers, a fair price for their beef. At the moment, they are not being paid a fair price. They cannot survive. It is not fair. If they were paid a fair price, then they could invest in greener methods of farming, which would reduce climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to move to a slightly different topic, which is kind of related. Is Cian Power from St David's here? And you need to get a microphone.
The most recent figures for homelessness from Wicklow County Council in December state that there are 14 children my age or younger in emergency accommodation and a total of 71 children homeless in our county in total. What will you do to lower this figure to 0?
Okay, Valerie, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, well, this is something that should never have happened. It's an absolute disgrace. And I was very annoyed yesterday to see press releases stating how wonderful we've got the homeless figure below 10,000. In the 1940s, when this country was a very young state, I mean, it was only 20 years old, we were able to find the money in a very poor country to build large social housing estates all over the country, in Wicklow, in Dublin and so on. And you'll still see them standing there, very fine houses. And houses, in fact, the idea was that you were given a half acre as well, so you could grow your own food and so on. Today, we're a rich, developed country, and we cannot house our own people, we cannot feed our own people. I mean, I've worked with a charity in Dublin that feeds people, and I've stood there at 6 in the morning and watched women and children and small babies and old people just come out of the alleyways and the side roads. I saw a man there recently. He came out, he'd been sleeping rough all night with frost all over his coat. And little children, the parents can't feed them, they bring them in, they get them a breakfast, and they try and get them off to school. I believe, and this is, I suppose, my main point really in my own campaign, we need to get back to the basics. We need to provide a roof over everyone's head. We need to provide food for people. And until we do that, we can just stop wasting money on everything else. We have managed our money very badly in this country, and we only have to look at the Children's Hospital. That's an absolute disgrace. There should have been billions left there that could have been spent on other things. We're wasting our money. There's no joined-up thinking. And the problem, I think, really is that when you are a party politician, you go into the Dáil, you have great ideas beforehand. And remember, all of those promises in the manifestos, that's what they are. They're promises. Most of them are never going to happen at all. So they go into the Dáil and they take the oath of the lemming. In other words, they all run together and they take the least common denominator and nobody does anything. We need to get in there and say, this is a crisis, it's an emergency. Forget providing loads of money for very expensive commemorations, for example. We've spent a fortune on 1916. I'm not saying we shouldn't commemorate these things, of course, but we don't need to spend millions the way they are. The expenses that we're dishing out to people, the banks, the way they've taken our money. I mean, we've done all the wrong things with our money. And here we are, ready to put the same parties back in. In Wicklow, there is no independent TD. I mean, I echo what was being said over here by Joe Bean. There is no woman TD. And I really do think the time has come to try and rectify that, because we are not looking after our own people.
Thank you. I think, Simon, you might want to answer some of those points.
Yeah, well, firstly, I don't think we should stereotype. There are some brilliant politicians in political parties. There are some not so brilliant politicians in political parties. There are brilliant independents, and there are not so brilliant independents. So let the people, and the Taoiseach said they're nutters, but let the people actually decide. But most people I know in politics, even if I fundamentally disagree with them, work bloody hard. Homelessness is the biggest scar from the economic recession in this country. It's something we should have a sense of collective shame over. I think if we don't, I think there's something seriously wrong. The press release I saw yesterday in relation to welcoming the fall in homeless figures wasn't a government one, but it was from the Peter McVerry Trust, who are working on the front line with homeless people day in, day out, and I take what they say to be very serious. What we need to do here is we need to build more council houses. Only this week I had the pleasure of opening 144 new social houses in Rathnew. 9 of the families who'd moved into those houses just before Christmas had been homeless. One of the families were Syrian refugees. If you saw the delight on their face, moving into a new home, putting the key in the door, that's what we need more of. We now need to build and intend to build 12,000 local authority houses each and every year. But you know what? We've got to be honest with each other. There's a fair degree of hypocrisy when it actually comes to homelessness in this country. And I don't think any of them are on this stage. But we have a situation where politicians come into the Dáil, go down to the council and say, we got to sort homelessness. Then a planning application goes in to build houses beside them in terms of local authority houses, and they sign the petition to stop them. So can we stop being hypocritical? Can we stop with the NIMBYism? If this is an emergency, we need houses for our homeless people, we need houses in our community, and that means all of our communities, not just certain parts of this country or certain parts of this county as well. And the final point I'd make is, as Health Minister, there is a crossover between homelessness and a number of challenges in society, including addiction and mental health issues as well. Spoke to a man on Bagot Street the other day, Martin, who's homeless. Asked Martin why he doesn't go into the shelters at night, why he doesn't actually take shelters. He turns down shelter at night. And the reason is he's off heroin 3 years. He gets to see his kids on a Sunday, and he's petrified if he goes back into the shelter, he'll end up back on drugs or his possessions will be stolen. I fully agree with the call from Father Peter McVerry that we should make HICWA the regulator of homeless facilities, and we should make sure that everyone in there has their own room, feels secure, and those people who've come off drugs actually have the opportunity to stay off drugs as well. So this is a major challenge, but what we have to do is build local authority houses in this county like we now are, like the ones in Rathnew, and 12,000 a year across the country.
Okay, this side is very keen to get in, but could I the gentleman, all three of you had your hand up. Can you give me one solution? I don't want to hear what's gone wrong. So Joe, maybe one thing that you would highlight.
Yes, my solution is that we should have a 5-year emergency house building programme in this country, a national house building emergency task force, where in every county, each council would be tasked with taking on people as public sector workers and provide apprenticeships for all of the trades that go into building houses, supervised by people who are employed by the council, to build both social or council houses, as the Minister calls them, social houses, but also affordable houses, because there's a growing number of people in their 20s and 30s in this country who have got good jobs who cannot afford to buy a house. They don't qualify to get a council house, but they're not able to afford to buy a house either. And they're being sent down the road to Wexford to buy houses because they can't afford to buy a house in Wicklow. So my solution is an emergency task force, 5 years, build public housing for affordable and social need, and I think then in 5 years' time, I think we would have the problem fairly well solved.
Thank you. Nice and concise. I'll do John first, and then to you. So, just a nice solution.
Housing and homelessness is the biggest scandal in this country. When you hear a figure of 10,000 of our citizens sleeping on the streets, sleeping in tents, and people will see them driving up along on the N11, the tents on the side of the road. People will see them on the side of Braehead, tents. The figure of 10,000 is only those who are lucky enough to get emergency accommodation. And I say lucky enough because there's many other families, up to 43 families a month presenting to Wicklow County Council as homeless. Only a small fraction of those actually get emergency accommodation. There is no emergency accommodation provision within County Wicklow. So you have young homeless families from Greystones, from Bray, being put in B&Bs in Cortown and in Carlow and expected to travel up to school or work. That is a scandal, an absolute scandal. There's many other people. I was canvassing a house here in Greystones. And these are people that don't even make the homeless statistics. 3 generations of the one family living under the one roof. A husband, a wife, and 2 of their children sleeping in the box room of that house. And that is not an isolated incident. That is replicated right across the board. There are solutions. The solution is not pumping billions into the pockets of private landlords. We need to stop people going into homelessness first and foremost. We see private rents are spiraling out of control. The rent pressure zones that the government put in place are not working. We need an emergency 3-year rent freeze. And we need to reduce rent. So Sinn Féin are saying there needs to be a tax rebate of 1 month's rent. So up to €1,500 rebate. But we also need to see the most radical social and affordable housing building programme this state has ever seen, because there's a supply issue. 12,000 social houses a year will not address the scale of the problem we have here. We have a situation in this county where 2 large land banks owned by us, the people of this state, are being handed over to private developers. Those houses will not be affordable. Our young people will not be able to get them. They will be 400,000 plus. Only 30% of the houses on those 2 sites, there's 300 houses proposed for those sites, only about 30% of those will be social and affordable. We need real social, real affordable houses. And that's what Sinn Féin are saying. People may have heard of NAMA, the National Assets Management Agency. There's a 4 billion dividend coming into revenue, into government. That'll go into a black hole. Sinn Féin are saying that money needs to be ring-fenced and go towards the most radical social and affordable housing programme this state has ever seen. And we're saying 100,000 homes, real affordable and real social homes, need to be built over the programme of the next government to deal with this scandal where our people are dying on the streets. And Wicklow is no different. Unfortunately, we have seen deaths on the streets of Wicklow, and that will continue unless we get real about this issue.
Building housing. And also your point is taken that is public land, is it a resource or is it a commodity, which is an interesting point that you raised there. Now, again, just the points, because I wanted one more topic too as well. Thank you, John. I'm looking for solutions, we know how bad it is. Yeah, no waffle. We know how bad it is. So what is the solution?
Yeah, it's a no-brainer, because Wicklow County Council is the housing authority for Wicklow County. Maybe Jillian might know, or Joe might. Why haven't they built social and affordable houses for the past 6 years? Like they're sleepwalking into this situation again. I was talking to an ex-councillor the other day, and I said, is Wicklow County Council paralysed from the waist down or the waist up?
So your answer is
and
Wicklow
he
County
said,
Council,
all the way down.
Okay, they were to build houses. Jennifer,
why haven't it happened?
I'll be very brief. I have never been so ashamed of being Irish when I saw a picture of that old lady, she was in her 80s, who was eating her dinner in the middle of Dublin City over Christmas, or those children who were eating their dinner off the floors. Now, I don't care what political persuasion you are. I doubt if there's anyone in this audience who thinks that that's the kind of society we want to be, okay? When it comes to addressing the housing crisis, I find it so frustrating because we do an awful lot of talking in this country. We do a lot of big plans and we don't implement them. The solution is very simple. We just build houses. It's not rocket science. We have land, we need to build social houses on it, we need to build affordable housing on it. The state has to take the responsibility of the provision of housing for people in hand and not rely on the private market to do it. It is not the job of the private market to provide our social responsibilities, and that is the ultimate solution to it.
But what you're on Wicklow County Council, why hasn't it happened?
I want to do law and order. Law and order next. Law and order. No, law and order next. Law and order next. Okay, there's not everyone gets a chance. Okay, 1 minute if you want to do it.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Look, I agree with a lot of what has been said. The solution is more housing. Fianna Fáil has put forward a plan for 200,000 new houses, including 50,000 social and 50,000 affordable. But everybody has plans for housing. All of the parties are saying we need 150,000, 200,000, 250,000. If we're going to solve this, we need to check in with ourselves, right? This country has been through tough times in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. There have been plenty of times where there hasn't been a lot of money. And no previous government, the Fianna Fáil Green government, before that the Fine Gael Labour government, before that whatever coalitions, no previous time have we seen 4,000 homeless children. It hasn't happened before. So every one of us cares. Everybody cares. Every single person in Dáil Éireann cares. There is no question about that. And none of the parties have ownership of caring. Everybody cares deeply about this. We all want to build more houses. But we have to check in with ourselves and say, this is not normal. We've been watching the figures on the news for years and years as the figure has gone up and up and up. And people have said, well, you know, the figures are higher in other countries, the figures are higher here, the figures are higher there. As a nation, across all political persuasions, we must draw a line and say, this is not who we are. This has never been allowed happen in our country before, no matter who was in power. And no matter who leads the next government, this can never happen in this good and decent country again. Thank you.
No, we're not.
No, John,
we're not going
we
to go
didn't allow
backwards.
that.
I said solutions.
No, John,
Solutions.
we
No, I think our young students deserve solutions. I'm going to ask a slight change of tempo here. There's two questions that I want to read one after the other because they're both the same topic. There's Jacob Browner and Adon Daly. Is there a microphone? If we read both questions because they're both related. So Jacob first, perhaps.
So recently, gangland violence has reached a level of intensity that nobody could have imagined 10 years ago. So far, Wicklow has remained largely untainted by serious criminal enterprises. What can you do to keep Wicklow a safe place?
And then the next question, which is related to it, Adon Daly. I'm saying the name right?
My question is what can you do to ensure that the Gardaí are properly funded to their jobs? Do we need to reopen Garda stations in rural Wicklow that have been closed?
Okay, so law and order. Seamus, off you go.
Hiya, they're very good questions. I was the victim. I know we're talking about gangs there and things like that, and you mentioned that it wasn't really a big issue in Wicklow. Well, you probably all remember the shooting down at the boxing club in Bray, my hometown. And my brother was down there that morning, walking our family dog. And God knows, he could have been in the crossfire, and I may have had a deceased brother. So it does exist. And maybe it's not as obvious in Wicklow than it is in Dublin, in the city centre. It exists all over Ireland. And enough is enough. We are under-resourcing our guards. There are not enough guards on the streets. There is not enough visibility in terms of the guards and a presence in our towns across Wicklow and our villages. Elderly residents in rural Wicklow are being targeted by gangs, and some of them are on their own, in fear. In fear, every night, tonight, there are residents across Wicklow in fear, and the government need to do more. And if you vote me in, I will hold the TDs to account on this issue.
Okay, I'm maybe over to Valerie. And again, we know it's bad. The recent weeks have been horrendous, Bishop and Dundalk horrendous. So what kind of solutions would you put forward?
Well, I'm very interested in this topic. One of my children is a Garda, and he was very badly beaten up by a gang of 7 people who beat him unconscious and then got a screwdriver and slit his leg till he bled very badly. Thankfully, he's grand again. But I really do think the solution to this is to reopen all those Garda stations. Because it's not, you know, the answers were given by the Minister for Justice, Department of Justice. They say, okay, well, we don't have that much business. No, you don't. It's the presence. It's actually having a Garda station there 24 hours if possible. And do you remember we had the Green Man where you could go up after hours and hit the button on it and you'd immediately be in contact with a Garda. It's the presence on the street. It's the open Garda stations. We've ripped the heart out of rural Ireland between Garda stations and closing post offices. But we also need to equip the guards properly. I mean, it's quite ridiculous that our Gardaí are going out to fight with organised crime. And all they have is a pepper spray, whereas everybody else has a gun in their pocket. I know we have a certain number of armed guards as well, but not very many. But I really do think we need to give them proper cars, proper equipment, proper body protection. I mean, I've covered a number of stories where guards were shot out on the beat. You remember the one up in Julian's town? well, very near Julianstown. It was the anniversary there recently. And they were robbing a credit union and one of the guards was shot dead. I mean, I think we have to give a lot more protection to our Gardaí. We have to give them better equipment, and I think we have to open the Garda stations.
Okay, Joe wanted to come in there with,
did.
solutions, we don't bash.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just want to say, unfortunately, while it might appear that Wicklow has escaped, there are gangs in operation, certainly in some parts of this county. And there have been very serious crimes, and there's a serious amount of intimidation going on, particularly of vulnerable young people who are being used to transport drugs. There's also a massive, massive cocaine epidemic coming across this country, which is actually affecting all parts of society, and is going to contribute in the next few years to even greater amounts of crime, because vulnerable people are being addicted to cocaine, and they're going to have to get into crime in order to fund that habit. This government has put forward one solution, which is that they've taken the chief superintendent out of Wicklow and put the chief superintendent down in Wexford. We don't even have a head of command in Wicklow anymore. It's gone to Wexford. That is not good enough as far as I'm concerned to answer the second question. We need more Gardaí in the Garda stations, but we also need them on the beat. We need more community Gardaí. We need more people who are trained to deal with some of these gangland thugs. That's going to require investment, but it has to be done to keep our people safe. If I'm elected, that is an issue I will certainly be taking on board.
Solution, and then Joe, John, you want solution?
Well, the solutions are straight in front of us. The first solution that I would do is that, on the M50 and the N11, if you're over in England, they have ANPR cameras on those. So therefore, that if there is a robbery in any part of Wicklow, once they go back, because that's mainly where they're going, back onto the N11, they could be stopped anywhere along that way, because the camera in the control unit will tell them that where exactly that car is. It was like the robbery in Newtown. He went straight onto the N11. Before he got to Bray, he could have been apprehended. The second solution is that in Seasons Park, we're probably the only private estate that have their own camera system. And prior to that, we would have had 7 burglaries every year. That's 3 years ago. Since we put our cameras in, we have ANPR cameras, which every car is tracked as it comes in. We have all our estate is firewalled, so that there's no way to...
Surveillance is your answer.
No, we can't. No, it's security, so we wouldn't be allowed surveillance. No, what happened? So since we have installed those cameras, they were paid for with the householders. We've had zero break-in. So I can understand why. I mean, we have had all over Wicklow and Dublin, people have said, geez, how have you got all those cameras there? Like, we'd love to do the same. But Kilcool were going to do it, and then they just got fobbed off.
Okay, so that's a solution. It's good. I mean, just
but these are this is what, I mean, I was talking to a guard today, and he said, that's what the guards love, because it takes the petty crime. Of course. And they can, and the other thing, I wouldn't really open rural Garda stations, because it's a waste of resources in that respect.
So you'd be against that?
Because no, it's not. But it's not that against it. It's because we have to have smart policing. We just can't like, you could have a guard in a Garda station, right? You could, like, these people have mobile phones. Say, he's in the station, so we'll rob the estate down the road while he's there. So, like, you have to. It's populist to say, look, we'll have more guards, we'll have more nurses, we'll have more doctors. That's just populism. But who's going to pay for the squeeze middle? And you have to use our law.
I appreciate your comment. John, and again...
Yep, no, I'll try to be brief, Jill. And I have to agree with Joe in terms of the drugs epidemic that is rampant, not just across Wicklow, but right across the state. And it's an issue that has been here for many, many years, and successive governments have failed to tackle it. I grew up in an area of Bray that was flooded with heroin back in the 70s and 80s. I seen some of my friends, when I grew up with them, now 6 foot under, passed away, and governments have failed to deal with the issue.
So solutions?
Solutions, well, we need to invest. I mean, there was a situation where the drugs task force was without a coordinator for over a year because of a recruitment embargo. So they're not being given the resources to deal with the issue. We see the Garda stations, Denard, Hollywood, and it was only after a lengthy campaign that we got the Garda station open in Denard. But there's no broadband. We still have a police station in Hollywood that's closed. It's critical that we have the resources pumped into rural areas, but also in urban areas. We have a situation here in Greystones that we have a Garda station that is simply not fit for purpose. We have a situation where Gardaí have to, they can't respond to calls because there's insufficient vehicles. Insufficient Gardaí on the beat to deal with it. We have a situation here in Wicklow where districts have no community Gardaí. We had a situation here in Wicklow where the drugs unit was disbanded, and it was only after massive pressure that the drugs unit was re-established. So we need to invest in our Gardaí. And Sinn Féin, we want to see 16,000 Gardaí, frontline Gardaí, and we want to see 2,000 civilian staff to free up the Gardaí that are sitting behind the desks within the Garda stations, so they too can get out on the beat. And that is how, and only how, we'll actually get on top of this scourge that is right across our entire society.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jill.
Simon, I think you want to answer that.
There's a two-pronged approach to tackling gangland crime and keeping our people safe. The first is to be tough on crime, and that means every political party supporting the special criminal court so that our judiciary has the power to put away the people who are threatening our young people, taking their lives and showing a level of depravity, and not protecting the provisional movement, which was involved in drugs in the past. Supporting the special criminal court, part one. Part two, recruiting 700 more Gardaí each and every year to bring the total number to 19,000. We need a lot more than 16,000 as well. One of the worst decisions taken in the past was closing down. I'm glad to see Sinn Féin now speaking for the Garda Commissioner. One of the worst decisions taken during the time of the economic recession was the decision to close down Templemore. We all agree with that. We need to hire more guards. But the second part is we have to protect our young people in terms of education. We've brought in a new drug and alcohol program for all our schools now. When you are if you take drugs in a school, your purchasing of those drugs is supporting gangland activity. So we have to get really serious in terms of that. And we also have to take an approach in relation to if a young person is caught with a small amount of drugs in their possession, the first person they should be sent to see is a health professional for a health intervention, not the criminal justice system. So we have to look after our young people as well. So tough on crime, but also tough on the causes of the crime too.
Do you know, I've got one last question before we go into our summaries, because we're running over time. I know everybody's very keen to get in. It's hard to manage it. But this question, I think, is quite pertinent to young people. It's related to the drugs issue. Kevin Coffey, would you like to read out your question? I need a mic over here, sorry. Who's Kevin? Do we have him? Yep. He's in the house. And this is a really important question, I think, and it leads into the whole law and order and what young people are facing the whole time. So your question, Kevin.
Do any of the candidates support the decriminalisation of drugs? Why or why not?
Yeah. Who would like to open?
Just to follow on from Simon's last comment on it, yes, that would be Green Party policy to look at decriminalisation for small amounts, and to look at the two-prong approach that has been mentioned, look at why people would end up with addictions or with drug dependency. And that recreational drug taking at the weekend that's consistent, that people are doing it consistently, that is an addiction as well. It's not to be seen as something that's just recreational. And so we would look at that for small amounts. Possession, you don't end up in the criminal justice system, that you end up in the health system. Would be another issue for the health minister to take on. He's got plenty to do with already. And then looking at the root causes of it, and looking at education, and looking at how young people, more involvement in sports or education, and just keeping people out of that cycle and making them aware of the really detrimental side of drugs to society, both for their own use.
So you'd be in favour of not decriminalising?
No, I said decriminalisation.
Oh, decriminalise of,
yes.
right, okay. Yeah. Of small amounts, yes.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, okay.
Okay,
cool.
thank you.
Sorry, beg your pardon. And then James, you're a teacher?
Yes, I'm a teacher, and I teach. One of my subjects is SPHE, if anyone doesn't know, it's social personal health education. One of the key things that I focus on when I'm teaching is teaching in terms of future-focused policies, in terms of future focus, in terms of the young people being educated about what drugs can do, what the drugs are, what are their effects,
and how to say no. Okay? In terms of the question, I wouldn't be, and the party wouldn't be in favour of decriminalisation. However, I do believe if a young person was found by a guard, let's say on the street, with a small quantity of drugs, that their life shouldn't be ruined because of that. They shouldn't be affected for the rest of their lives in terms of going to America on holiday or for work. They shouldn't be affected in terms of their future work options. Okay? I think education, speaking as a teacher, obviously, is key. If we can educate our young people that they don't need to take illegal substances on a Friday night or on a Saturday night to have fun, well then that is important, I believe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Well, this is one point where I think you're going to have clear blue water between candidates, because I would be utterly and absolutely opposed to removing the criminalisation of drug use. I think because many medical experts will say that even beginning with cannabis, marijuana, any of those what might be considered to be, maybe safe enough drugs to take on a recreational basis are very often leading as a gateway to further more serious drug use. And I think we have to be very clear about that. And when the candidate says, well, we'll look at it, to me, that's a very watery kind of an answer. I'm making it very, very clear here tonight to everybody that I would not support the decriminalisation of drug use if it ever comes before me, if I'm a member of Dáil Éireann.
Okay.
John? I presume the questioner is talking about heroin or
no,
cocaine.
I think it's across the way. So
Yeah, but it'd be an organised crime, like, they're into the most serious end of it. So, like as Joe said, like, you couldn't decriminalise heroin or cocaine. Okay, there might
maybe
be...
the use of it, so that the person goes to a medical doctor as opposed to going to prison. I think that's maybe the argument. It's been done in Portugal, where someone who's picked up there, so there's not directly gone into the criminal system. And as Seamus said, they're all of a sudden have a record, they can't go on holidays to America. It's how we approach it. We're penalising perhaps the wrong people.
Yeah, but like what I can see there is that you're talking about cocaine or heroin. Like, okay, if somebody has only a small amount cut for the first time, it's not, okay, it's smacking the hand.
It's more how you approach the person than the drug, I think. It's an interesting thing. So, Jennifer?
Can I just point out, the biggest gateway to drugs, and I'm including alcohol in this as well, is trauma. And when someone is suffering and they have, mental health issues or have been abused, that is when they will turn to drugs. And I think we need to start looking at that, looking at why people do drugs, why they get involved in drugs. Even when we're talking about, people being involved in criminal activity around drugs, why are they? We are really at a point in our society where there are huge divisions. We have some people who are doing very well, and we have a whole swathe of our society that are being left behind. And we have to make sure that we know, that we help those people. So it's about education, it's about supporting communities that are going through particularly difficult times. And we need to make sure that when teenagers look at someone who's involved in a criminal gang, that they don't see it as something that's positive. It's not a status thing for them. It's not a career choice for them. We need to provide them with alternatives. And I don't think that's happening. And I think it is one of the biggest risks that's facing our society at the moment is this division that's happening. And we need to make sure that we close it because we really don't want to go down paths such as in the UK or the US, because that is not who we are.
Perfect. Well, I have to say, the questions were awesome and challenging and interesting, and the panels were amazing because it's very hot up here. I don't know if it's hot down there. It's very hot up here too, and with the energy and the vigour that you all took to answer the questions, and it was the most polite debate that I've ever attended. Thank you very much, gentlemen and ladies. And so now we just come to the final. So 2 minutes each to things you did we didn't get to say. Maybe I didn't come back to you, and we can maybe just do it along the line. So Stephen, maybe just. What did you not get to say? What didn't I ask you? What would you like to leave? What thoughts would you like to leave with our audience here?
Thank you, and thank you to the audience. I think we covered a lot of ground tonight. I hope everybody's gotten to see where we stand on various different issues, and the good thing about standing in a party, I've heard parties being criticised tonight, is that we actually produce policies. You can go online and you can look at the Green Party policies, or Fianna Fáil, or Soc Dems, or Fine Gael policies, and you will know what we stand for. Because when you vote for somebody, you're voting for that party's policies. And that's a very important thing to remember. And I would recommend, if people do, you have got time, to go online and just compare the party's policies. There was actually a very good piece done in the Irish Times comparing policies of various different parties. But as I said from the outset, I think climate change is the biggest issue that's going to affect us, and the younger generation here especially. I think the key to it, proper planning, how we build our towns, what services we put in those towns, how we build that housing, the type of housing that we put in, the energy efficiency of that housing, the provision of housing for people that need it. Proper planning is the key to how society functions well. As part of that is, how do you get from town to town? How do you get to the places that you work? How do you get to places of recreation? Good public transport. That's what's needed for Wicklow. Proper planning, good public transport. Our environment. Our environment is not just our natural environment, it's our built environment, and it's the interconnection between all those parts. Our air quality, our water quality. We talked about farmers earlier and the difficulty they have, the depletion of soils through intensive farming. All these factors affect us. They affect our health. They affect the way society works. It impacts on the health service. Many of the factors in society cause the illnesses that impact on the health services. So for me, it's through proper planning, sustainable development, and building resilience into our economy to fight climate change. Thank you.
Thank you. So Valerie, what would you like to leave the audience with?
Well, I just think it's great that all of the young people tonight told us about their concerns. That's very important. The one thing I would say to you is that we would like to hear more of the voice of youth. And don't wait for permission from adults. Just get out there and do it. I mean, adults have made an awful mess of this country. They've made a mess of Wicklow. I mean, I don't have time to go into everything, but you know, all of the illegal dumping and so on. I mean, I broke the first story about illegal dumps over in West Wicklow. Everybody denied it was happening. And one October morning, I actually had to climb into a dump to prove it was actually there. I think, you know, the future and the present, as Jillian said earlier, is in the hands of our young people. I am very concerned about education, by the way. I think we are doing our young people a disservice. Most of our young people who go to third level, unless they're coming from wealthy parents, they are propping up the chippers, the service stations, the shops of this country. And I don't mind young people working, I think it's wonderful. But the problem is they're propping them up to pay for their basic college fees, to pay for tutoring and to pay for their classes and to pay for exorbitant accommodation. And I really do think if we care about the future of this country, we need to look after our students, abolish fees and get them into very simple accommodation, but accommodation we can manage to pay for. And the other thing I'd like us to look at is animal abuse. You know, people who abuse animals abuse humans as well. And what we're doing to animals in this country is an absolute disgrace. We've got hare coursing, we've got greyhounds, we've got abandoned animals, abandoned dogs, abandoned horses. And I think we really need to do something about that. I hope that the people who are elected, and I really do want to see some good independence in the Dáil, not just me, but I do hope that they bring an element of kindness and caring with them as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for tonight's debate. I think we live in a wonderful community. I've been so proud to grow up in this town. This town has provided me and my family with so many opportunities, including living in a great community, and now I want to raise my own family here as well. This is a great community, but we need to make sure as we continue to grow, as our population grows, that we put the services in place, that we make sure we continue to be able to meet all of the needs, and that we create an inclusive, caring community. So that's what I want to do with you for the next 5 years. I think you know me at this stage, and I certainly know you and your concerns. It's been the honour of a lifetime to represent you in Dáil Éireann. We've worked together on a lot of projects and we've made a lot of progress, and I've used whatever role I've had to try and advance the needs of this town and this county. And even though I've been in busy roles and have never shirked difficult roles and difficult challenges, I've always tried to be accessible, holding weekly clinics here, meeting you, hearing your views, and I want to do a hell of a lot more of that, because I believe when we work together there's so much we can achieve. I want to thank St David's, I want to thank Templecarrig for hosting this debate, and I want to say to the young people in this room, as a relatively young person myself, despite my grey hair, never wait your turn. Valerie is entirely right. I've spent my entire life being told, wait your turn, you're too young, you can do it in the future. We need you. We need your leadership. We need you to continue to poke us, prod us, and tell us to do better, and we need you to work with us. And I really look forward to doing that. So thank you so much for being here tonight.
My summary, I'll just focus on two things. Firstly, briefly on the environment. Before I do that, thank you to all the organisers, the students and the staff for putting this on. It's been a fantastic night, thank you. The environment, I said that, you know, I've talked the talk, I've walked the walk, sorry, I haven't just talked the talk. I've set up recently, some of you may be aware, the SEEP programme, Schools Environmental Awareness Programme. The plan is, and it's already started months ago, that I will go and my team of volunteers will go to all 6th classes across Bray initially and then across the whole of Wicklow to give an environmental talk about awareness but about proactivism and not just reacting to the problem. I'm also going with a team of environmentalists to all TY classes, so I'll probably see you guys shortly, hopefully, in the coming months, to talk. Now, you have green schools, I'm aware of that as a teacher, but we can do more. And I would say to the young people here, please get involved. Get involved in Greystones, Tidy Towns, get involved. If there's no Tidy Towns group where you live, set one up. It's doable, trust me. The other thing that I'm really passionate about, and I mentioned it earlier in the night, is mental health. Okay? I have a friend, I won't name her name obviously, she was suicidal. She went to her GP in Bray. That GP referred her to St. Vincent's. She got into St. Vincent, into A&E at 9:30 in the evening. The time she was seen by a trained psychologist was 5:30 the next morning. Only for her mother was sitting with her, God knows what could have happened. Then she was told, very briefly, then she was told that they couldn't even give her a sleeping tablet, that she had to go home and go to Newcastle the next morning. That is not good enough. And if I get into Dáil Éireann, I will ensure that mental health is one of the key issues that I will try my best to fix. Thank you.
Thank you all, and I just want to pay a huge tribute to the students in St. Davidson and Templecarrig, and indeed to the staff. To be able to come together like this really is quite incredible. And if you look at what's happening in America, if you look at what's happening in the UK, with societies becoming more divided, it is important, it is profoundly important that we can all come here and discuss these things respectfully and vigorously. To the students of Templecarrig today, I want to say, I was at matches when the All Blacks absolutely crushed Ireland. You will have your day. You will play Michaels again, and you will win. Today was not that day, but don't lose faith. We beat the All Blacks twice in the end. I just want to say that regardless of what happens next week, it has been truly the greatest honour of my life to represent and serve the people of Wicklow over the last 9 years. And I want to thank you all for the support that you have shown for that. We all work hard. There's non-elected people, there's councillors, there's TDs here. It is an incredible honour to serve. And thank you for bearing with us all, imperfect politicians. There's a lot of focus in politics and the media, and it becomes particularly sharp around election times on the negatives. You know, and there are serious challenges we have to deal with. We've talked tonight about climate and sustainability. We've talked about housing. We've talked about health and local issues, school places, the N11, and we do focus on these things. I've lived in a few different countries around the world and worked in other countries around the world. And we must never lose sight of the fact that this is an extraordinary country. It is an incredible country. We are a good and decent people. And everyone on this stage cares. It's why we're here. And it is right and proper that we should propose different solutions. But I just think it's always worth checking in. You know, when the pressure goes up and the tension rises, never forget, this is an amazing country. It is a beautiful country. This is an incredible county, an incredible community, and we are all very lucky to be part of it and constantly trying to make it better. Thank you.
So I just first like to say thank you very much for A, having the idea to grill us, as you did, and B, inviting us along. And I must say you have the best bell ringer that I've ever come across. So. Now, look, I'll echo some of what was said previously. We do live in a beautiful county and we live in a beautiful country, and we do so many things right here. We have, you know, we live community. Our communities are second to none across the world. But there are lots of things that we can do a whole lot better as well. So I would like to work with you to make Greystones, Wicklow and Ireland the best place to live, work, study, play, retire, whatever, you know, whatever's your thing. But we need to work together to do it. We need a place where our families and communities are supported. We need a place where we have quality public services and a place where we can actually achieve a much better work-life balance. We need a society that gets it right for our children, but for all of our children. Because until we have that, our communities will not be robust, they will not be strong, and they can be undermined by, you know, negative forces as such. We need a strong economy, and one that is green but also fair. Now, this is all achievable. It's not pie in the sky, because other countries have actually achieved it, and I know that we can too. We just need to get our balance right in this country. So what I would like for you to go away with, three words that I think we should really underpin our politics, okay? Three words are positive, progressive, and strategic. We need to be positive in our approach, in our politics. We need to be progressive in our reform and strategic in our thinking. And I'd finally like to say, so if you hope for better, please vote for better on Saturday the 8th. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for inviting us here tonight. I was super excited about coming down and debating with the fellow candidates and yourselves and answering your questions as best we could. Picking up on what Stephen has said there at the start, I'm an independent candidate, but I have had a website up since I started last March. And all the issues that I would hope to represent the people of Wicklow are on it. And it's health, social justice, which is about egalitarianism, housing, climate change, childcare in the squeeze middle. I could say a few words about that yet. Education, law and order. So if you go into votejohnlarkin.com, you will see they're all there. They're all transparent. You can comment. There's a feedback page on it where you can go in and, you know, say you agree or disagree, or what, especially on climate change, what your ideas are, and I'll acknowledge that. And the other thing that we didn't talk about tonight was childcare in the squeeze middle. They are the people that go up the N11 every day, that pay for the guards and the nurses and the doctors. These are the people that get a very raw deal when it comes to childcare, because they have the highest childcare now in the whole of Europe. When England vacates the EU, these are the people that have to pay for high mortgages, high childcare, have to provide two cars, one going one way, the other going the other way. These are the people that, you know, if they have to go to a doctor in the morning, it'll cost them €60, or they'll pay €124 for their drugs if it's the maximum amount, or they will have to pay €80 if it's an overnight stay in a hospital. Where if they were in the UK and the NHS, they would pay the princely sum £7.75. Thank you very much.
Now, just to sum up, you have given all of us up here a bit of a grilling. I want to put one question back to you, particularly the younger people in the room. So how many people, is this the first election that you can vote in? So how many first-time voters have we got? Put your hands up.
I'll give out these forms.
No, just particularly to the younger voters, can I just say the importance of actually coming out and voting? I mean, you've heard some of your candidates here. The importance of actually going out and using your vote. Unfortunately, there are too many young people that don't. They don't engage in the process. And unfortunately, in my view, that's what's let us down. This is your future. And these are some of your politicians. We have 5 TDs representing the county, 3 of which are here. And I have to say we work well as a team. It's not all largy-bargy and fighting. When we are in the Dáil, there are some issues where we can actually put on the county colours and fight for common purposes. But sometimes the county colours have to come off on the bigger issues that need to be addressed. And unfortunately, there are some big issues. There's big challenges facing us. And this isn't about holding the next government to account. This is about putting in place the next government. And I firmly believe that as the party I'm a member of, we haven't been in government. This country has been dominated by the two big political parties since the foundation of the state. And the message that I'm getting going around on the doors from young people, from people who are on housing lists, from people who are lying on trolleys, from people right across the board, that they want to see change. And change isn't about just changing the individuals, it's about changing governments and looking at the policies that will address all of the issues, all of the crises right across our sector, whether it's mental health, whether it's education, whether it's our health service. So this is a really, really important election. So irrespective, and the lights have got out, irrespective, I'll finish on this and then you can turn the lights out, maybe after Joe. Irrespective as to who you go out and vote for, get out, use your vote. It's the most powerful tool that you all have. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all sincerely for giving me the opportunity and the organisers for squeezing me in. I really appreciate it. And the reason I'm standing is I want to make sure that everybody sees the Templecarrig sign, because I know I've been sitting in front of it all night and that wasn't supposed to happen. And the organisers very, very kindly allowed me to come in and take part in this debate. And I'm very grateful to you for having the patience to listen to my answers and for your questions. The real reason, I suppose, for this debate is the fact that so many of the students in the two schools are able to vote. I just want to point out there's somebody in the audience here tonight. He's the youngest ever person to be elected to Wicklow County Council. He's sitting quietly over there, but I'm going to name him. His name is Councillor Rory O'Connor. He's over there in the cream jacket, halfway down. Put your hand up, stand up there, Rory, so we can see you. So, all of you who have just got the vote, Rory can be your role model because he is now a county councillor since last May at the age of 20. And what's more important, he's an independent. And as far as I'm concerned, it is vital that you elect at least one independent from Wicklow. When all of these very good people, very able people are elected, if 4 of them are from a party, those 4 people, despite everything they said tonight, unfortunately, due to our party whip system, will get a list of what they're to vote for, how they're to vote every time there's a vote in Dáil Éireann. The party whip will apply. If you put in an independent, the independent will be your voice and will act on your behalf. And I would ask you to consider me as being your independent TD when the election is held. Thank you.
Wow. I have to say, I don't know about you, but up here it was a fantastic night. I have to compliment all the candidates here. There was a huge range of questions from the students, and they all addressed it very robustly at times. I mean, Stephen was saying again, good point, that the environment is not just rural, it's a built environment. Some people forget that point. And Valerie said kindness, and don't ask for permission. 2 very good points. Simon said he loves his community here, and he is a local man as well, but he said, don't wait your turn. I don't know, but the teachers would have liked that in classes or whatever. Don't wait your turn. It's good advice. And then Seamus talked about the environment. You've got to book him for the talk he's going to do. And he's very keen on the mental health. And that's a really big issue because, as Jennifer said too, mental health can often lead to addiction. Stephen, you said it was very good to discuss stuff. It was an incredible honour to serve here. And you started the tone, you said, an extraordinary county. And it's an extraordinary county. And you said, it is true, actually. We all care. I mean, they're all competing here today, but they all care. They genuinely care. They wouldn't be here otherwise, giving up their evening. And Jennifer, you were saying, we do so many things right, but we can do better. I like that line. John, you squeezed in the childcare because you didn't get a chance to do it during the debate. It wasn't on the list because hopefully these young people don't need it yet. Yeah, they don't. We're hoping they have other things to do first. I think the health service too, yeah. And then, John, you were saying for first-time voters, which is quite a number, you're saying go and vote. Go and vote. And that's very true, because people got their time to be like, go and vote. Because 100 years ago, the women only got their vote. I mean, like, it seems strange. In the Middle East, women still don't have votes. It's kind of crazy. And Joe said, despite blocking the Templecarrig School thing, he praised the young Rory O'Connor. Well done, 20 Councillor. So I want to say, vote. Please do. The fact that you've come here and you've taken part, you've had questions, please vote. It is a very sacred honour, and we don't realise how privileged we are to be able to vote. So really do vote, even if you're not quite sure who to vote for somebody. And I want to thank again Alan Cox and Mary O'Doherty, the two principals, for setting this up. Morgan Ryan, thank you, sorry. I want to thank Morgan Ryan and John McGuinness for doing an amazing job in organising all this. I want to thank all the students who put forward questions, very, very good questions. I want to thank the two people here who are gone, who did the announcements in the start. I'm sorry I took the box away for the girl because it was too short. I want to thank our bellman. I want to thank the person who turned out the light there because we know to go home. And I also want to thank all the candidates because it's a long time, you're under pressure, you have a lot of things to do, and I think the school and the community really appreciate that you took the time to come here and share your views and passion for this county. So to the candidates, I wish you all the very best of luck on Saturday. It's a team picnic. Ah, you're back.
So, hello everyone. My name is Jillian Ryan, and I'm also a fifth-year Politics and Society student at Templecarrig. Now, after that engaging debate, we really don't want to take up too much more of your time before we close tonight's town hall, especially since we're about 50 minutes over at the moment. But it is important to recognise that not every young person has the opportunity to take part in an event like tonight, or to study politics through the Politics and Society course. In fact, just 49% of Irish teens even trust our political institutions, well below the 61% average across developed nations worldwide. The importance of building trust cannot be underestimated, as without it, how is one to engage with politics? And that's one reason why tonight is so important. As well as informing ourselves politically, we, as young people and adults alike, are building that necessary trust in our community of Wicklow, through education, including activities as tonight. So thank all of you for attending, including our politicians.
Firstly, I'd like to say a huge thanks on behalf of all the students to Mr. Ryan and Mr. McGuinness, our two politics teachers, for helping us organise this fantastic event and enabling us to experience working with other students outside the school and produce a meaningful event for the community. I'd also like to thank students we've also worked with alongside for the dedication and hard work that went into organising this event in a relatively short time frame. We'd like to thank all the candidates and all the audiences for attending, and also good luck to all the candidates. We'd like to thank the media for giving up their time to coming to this event. And lastly, on behalf of everyone, I'd like to say a huge thanks to Jillian Godsil for being our moderator tonight. And we have a small token of our appreciation.
Oh, wow. Oh, thank you. I'll come again. Thank you very much. Oh, you're very kind.
Thank you everyone for coming to this event, and remember to vote on Saturday the 8th, and thank you very much and safe home.